When you build a roller coaster, one of the most important things you have to decide is what manufacturer do I want to build this coaster. And while there are tons of roller coaster manufacturers out there, some defunct and some still operating and building new attractions to this very day. And there have certainly been some pretty crazy roller coasters built in the past, so today we're going to look at each coaster manufacturer's most ambitious coaster. Aerodynamics is no longer around, but during their day, they had a lot of ambitious roller coasters. They broke so many records, especially the inversion record. Aero was also responsible for having the first tubular steel track on a roller coaster with the Matterhorn bobsleds at Disneyland that opened in 1959. You could argue that that is their most ambitious coaster ever because they had to come up with a completely different track type, but I'm going to go with a different coaster. Same state though. For me, Aerodynamics' most ambitious coaster is X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is the world's first 4D roller coaster, and I can't imagine how crazy it felt when it opened because it is still considered one of the most intense roller coasters in the world to this day. 76 miles an hour at nearly hypercoaster heights, just insane. And just to add to that, your ride vehicle is flipping constantly throughout the experience. It may have even been a little too ambitious, considering this is what effectively put Aero into bankruptcy. B&M has been a model of consistency for the last couple of decades. When you buy a coaster from the company, you know you're going to get a high quality attraction that's a crowd pleaser even if it will cost you a lot. B&M was also the first to have an extreme inverted roller coaster with their B&M Invert model. The experience of being flipped upside down while hanging under the track was a unique one. And that's why other manufacturers wanted to copy this model, but none of them really had the same quality as B&M did with their inverts. Anyways, even with that, I think their most ambitious coaster is Fury 325 at Carowinds. They've built other coasters both for other Cedar Fair parks, Leviathan and Orion, but none of them are on the same scale as Fury 325. The Thin is a beast and really unlike any coaster out there. This is often regarded as one of the world's best coasters, and I definitely believe it. Cedar Fair was basically like, here's a big plot of land, do whatever you want, and B&M took advantage of it. While CCI was still in business, they built some monster woodies like Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm, but I think their most ambitious coaster was the Boss at Six Flags St. Louis. 122 feet tall, 66 miles an hour. This Thin is an absolute beast. Some people say it should be RMC'd, and that may be true, but that's besides the point for this list. The Boss is bigger than most major woodies that we see built today. Never mind when it opened 22 years ago. Chance Rides has an interesting collection of coasters, but Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom by far stands out as their most ambitious. This Hyper GTX is no small coaster. Well, it actually isn't that big, but it's big in the thrill department. The pacing is quite good, and there are numerous airtime hills throughout. The ride is said to have multiple moments of A+ ejector airtime. This coaster stands out in general, but for Chance Rides collection for sure. Getting back to woodies, let's talk about the Din Corporation and Mean Streak. This monstrous coaster stood at 161 feet tall and reached a speed of 65 miles an hour. Too bad this coaster was pretty terrible according to most accounts. No matter how good the ride experience was before it got RMC to Steel Vengeance, we can still look at it and raise our eyebrows because it was a big wooden roller coaster and an ambitious one for sure from Din Corp. And just for reference, while Mr. Din was on the team that built the Beast, I'm only including coasters from the actual Din Corporation company, which is why the Beast will not be on this list. Let's stick with woodies, more specifically Great Coasters International or GCI. They're known for their wooden twister roller coasters, but I think their most ambitious coaster comes from China. This being Wood Coaster. This ride looks absolutely awesome. It uses the terrain so unbelievably well. This is the main reason I think that it is the most ambitious GCI. This coaster is an engineering marvel, and while I doubt I'll ever have a chance to ride it, if you do, you should call yourself lucky, because this is quite possibly the world's best GCI. Who named that ride anyway? As far as Gerstlauer goes, their claim to fame for the thrill coaster department would have to be their vertical lift beyond vertical drop multi-inversion coasters. with Die Schwernis coming in on this list. This German coaster has hypercoaster heights and reaches a speed of nearly 80 miles an hour, and it also has some surprises that I won't spoil here up its sleeve as well. This coaster's huge lift is all indoors, and then the drop into the sunlight, or clouds given it's Europe, must be a breathtaking experience. That, paired with some huge elements at the beginning and low-to-ground maneuvers at the end, make it probably the best Gerstlauer in the world. Just an all-around crazy-looking ride. Giovanola only built 3 coasters, but they went big or went home, an invert and 2 hypers. And I'm going to say that their most ambitious coaster was Goliath at Six Flags Magic Mountain, because at the time, this was the world's tallest roller coaster. Not that it stood for very long, but still, it's impressive that Giovanola was able to build a coaster that broke the world height record, at least momentarily. Goliath is typically seen as far inferior to the B&M Hypers because it doesn't have much airtime and focuses more on drawn-out elements and an intense helix towards the end. But what you can't deny is that this coaster is sure a big one. And you can say without a shadow of a doubt that the name Goliath applies perfectly to this coaster. Gravity Group is the master behind the Voyage, and while that coaster is unbelievably long, I don't think it's their most ambitious project. I think for that, you want to go back to their first coaster, yes, their first coaster, Hades 360 at Mount Olympus. Not only does this ride have a joyful, heartwarming theme, but it's also very, very unique. Not only does it have an inversion that was added after the ride opened, but it also has 2 stretches that go under the parking lot. I mean, how wild is that? And yes, this was Gravity Group's first ever coaster. Usually you see manufacturers build up and then have crazy rides after slow beginnings, but Gravity Group was just the opposite. They started with Hades and Voyage before transitioning to doing more family coasters. Just weird. For Hopkins, I don't really know. Maybe there's one I'm missing, but I guess I'll go with Texas Tornado because those loops are just so weird. I guess you could say it's ambitious in and of itself to try to build a safe coaster with those loops. Intamin has built their fair share of crazy rides, so the world's fastest coaster, Formula Rossa, and the wooden coasters like El Toro are going to not make the top spot for me. As crazy as it feels to leave those coasters out, I think their most ambitious coaster is Kingda Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. Considering that roller coaster goes at least a yard off the ground, that one I think really deserves to earn the top spot for Intamin. Never mind the fact that it also reaches speeds of over 100 miles an hour. It's just wild to think that a roller coaster that tall and that fast exists. And it's been around for nearly 2 decades. Juma Rides Thane is pretty much just to copy people, so they don't really have anything for this list. It's so strange how they just copy these coaster models for other parks. I guess you could say they're tilt coaster because even if it is a knockoff, it's still a tilt coaster after all, and those things are wild. I don't know, this one was kind of hard for me to figure out, but I ended up choosing the tilt coaster because that ride is just so insane. And certainly not for the faint of heart. For a while, Mack Rides was kinda known as the company you go to when you need a Wild Mouse coaster, but they've really stepped up their game recently, including their spinning coasters, more specifically their extreme spinning coasters. I think Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City is the Mack Rides coaster that deserves to be on this list. It would be a fun multi-launch coaster without the spinning, but with the spinning, it takes it to a whole new level. Quite simply, this coaster looks absolutely epic. You could argue Ride to Happiness is more insane, but since Time Traveler was the original extreme spinning coaster, I think that's what deserves to be on this list. And this is why we love roller coasters, to see creativity and engineering like this. Mauer doesn't have much for this list, but their Skyloop model does stand out. This compact coaster features an interesting lift hill before flipping you through a double inversion. There are not very many coasters like this. In fact, there are pretty much none I can think of that even compare. So in that regard, this is a pretty ambitious ride. If you want to ride one in the States, you'll have to go to Magic Springs in Arkansas. Morgan didn't build very many roller coasters either, but like Giovanola, they built some big ones, including the world's longest coaster, Steel Dragon 2000. This Giga Coaster has an unreal 8,000 feet of track. That's the world's longest coaster by a long shot, and it feels kinda random that Morgan was the one to do it. But hey, the people in or visiting Japan don't care. This is a bucket list coaster for sure. And 8,000 feet of track? Yeah, I'd call that ambitious. Well, there you have it, part 1 of every manufacturer's most ambitious roller coaster. Stay tuned for part 2, that'll be coming out shortly. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.